This video is about the second of a series of bonsai sculptures, where I combine clay and wood to form the final piece. This time the sculpture was a commission, which in itself changes things, and it's something I will return to later in the video. But for now, here's where I began, with a dead branch taken from the Andes. Unlike with the previous sculpture, this branch didn't naturally resemble a bonsai, so I had to intervene it more directly, cutting and weathering it into shape. Having done that, I can now start working the clay. This particular bag had been sitting for some time and was slightly on the dry side, so I cut wedge tip, adding water between layers, creating thousands if not millions of layers, before moving to a ram's head wedge to achieve a more uniform consistency and remove any air that might still be trapped inside. And with the clay now prepared, I move on to shaping the foliage of the bonsai. My goal here is to form clouds of foliage that will conceal the joints between the wood fragments. As I keep making more of these videos, I am also trying to find new ways of presenting the process. There's always the matter of making the work more visible, and I don't think the issue lies only on what I'm showing, but how I'm showing it as well. So here's a small experiment on that direction. I left the foliage pieces to dry until they reached a leather hard stage, firm enough to hold their shape as I work them. At this point, I can hollow them out, reducing weight and removing any trapped air. Air pockets are risky, as they can expand in the kiln and crack or even destroy the piece. That's why even if I wedge the clay properly, I still double check and hollow each one. After losing most of their moisture, the pieces are Bisque fired in the kiln to around 900 degrees Celsius, making the clay body porous enough to absorb the water-based glaze. Although the clay hasn't vitrified yet, it's now significantly harder than it was in its greenware state. As with the first sculpture, I'm using a high iron glaze for the pot, and a jade glaze for the foliage. I did mention this was a commission, so I wanted to keep things similar to the first, playing it safe in a way. In hindsight, I'm not sure I'll continue accepting commissions on these bonsai sculptures until I can achieve more consistent results, especially in the sculpting process. At the moment, these sculptures feel too experimental and there's too much room for error. So adding deadlines and expectations to the equation is a risk I'm not entirely comfortable with. This is only the second piece in the series, after all. All the pieces were glaze fired to cone 6 at around 1200 degrees Celsius. And are now ready for assembly. I use an epoxy cement that creates a very strong joint. But here's where things went wrong. When I glued the pot to the base of the tree, there was still spray paint between the two surfaces. The paint didn't adhere to itself, so the tree separated from the base, and the upper section broke in the hands of my client. This is what the first, finished version looked like. Visually, the tree was well anchored to the pot, but I can now tell a few mistakes I corrected when I repaired the piece. I relocated the two upper foliage pieces to break that zigzag rhythm, and I also corrected the trunk divisions. Branches should separate in pairs. When they split into three, the trunk of the tree becomes harder to read. So here's how I solved it. It only took one ceramic branch to connect all the pieces together. And I also had to remake that small branch at the crown of the tree. Here are all the pieces Bisque fired and ready to glaze. I've been getting more and more into pottery lately. This firing, in fact, is almost completely pottery, if not for these two small branches. And I am glad, as I feel it's also informed my sculpting as well. One thing I borrowed from pottery is the use of wadding, which is normally used to keep the pieces from sticking to the kiln shelves. And I realized I could also use it to keep the small branches in place during firing. If you're not familiar with it, it's the small white pad beneath the smaller branch. It can be fired directly against bare clay, reducing the risk of it sticking. Bear with me as I do this last bit of assembly. I would like to thank you so much if you made it this far. I know I touched some delicate subjects in this video, so just know I'm always doing my best with these pieces. As always, I will leave you with a small montage of the finished sculpture on display. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.